So, hi, my name is Sifu Love, the Soul Whisperer, and I help people learn how to heal themselves through spiritualized martial arts practices.
That sounds absolutely beautiful, and I can't wait to dive more into that. Thank you, Sifu, for taking some time to sit down with me today. More importantly, for reaching out to want to sit down and share your story and connect with other human beings, including myself. I am beyond grateful. And let's get this in review conversation started. What do you think people's first impression of you is?
It's a really good question because I find that I'm not what people usually expect when they first see me. The fact is I've been doing Chinese martial arts for about 15 years. I speak a number of Asian languages, so I have a really strong tie to the Asian culture, which isn't something people expect when they first see me. Um, so people are always surprised. I remember many times of me doing kung fu in the park, and people are just really surprised, like, what's happening? What is he doing? So I would just say people tend to be shocked when they first see me because I'm not exactly what they would expect, which I find to be really exciting. It's kind of fun to be a it's just fun to express myself authentically, and that doesn't look like how other people express themselves. And so that sort of shock is really affirming to my own authenticity.
That's a really great way to put that. I like the way you say that. And it's so important to be authentic and be true to yourself because I think that lends the best part of ourselves to others, right?
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
did you get into Kung Fu and the love of Asian languages?
So, I always say that I learned how to use chopsticks before I learned how to use a fork. And that's very close to being true because I remember being really, really young and like trying to figure out chopsticks with my very small hands. So the Asian culture's always sort of worked its way into my body through the chopsticks. And um, my grandmother loved Asian philosophy for no specific reason. She just enjoyed it. So we talked about it often. And so the idea of Asian culture was so deeply embedded into me from such a young age. Um, I learned Japanese in elementary school. I started doing Chinese martial arts, and it just all sort of fell into this love of the Asian culture, and it's still fascinating to me today. Um, Martial arts or kung fu specifically, I started just before high school, and the reason I started was because I had come out, and my mom was worried that me being an out and proud person is going to invite violence or danger of some sort. So then she was like, okay, I support you, and I love you, and I want you to be safe. So I I was like, fine, I'll do some sort of self-defense classes. I'll do something so I have the basics of how to protect myself. And I remember going into the yellow pages, which is it definitely tells you how old this was because there's no such thing as the yellow pages anymore. But I went into the yellow pages, found a section for Chinese martial arts, flipped through, and I found an ad for one school, and I was really drawn to it. So I called them. I called them on the landline phone, and they invited me to come in, and I did the sort of interview process for them, and then they accepted me into the school. And it was then that started my whole process of learning Chinese martial arts, and I still practice to this day.
Wow. That's an incredible story and an incredible start. And I um I love that your mom loves you and wanted you to always be protected. That mama bear type thing is what I'm getting from that story. Just,
Hmm.
that she loves you and she hopes other people love you, which I think is just such a cool thing from a mom perspective, but still so disheartening we have to think that way.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate that the thought has to come up, and I feel really fortunate that the only concerns that my mom has is for my own safety. Um, and I feel really grateful for that because I know a lot of other queer folks who don't have that sort of acceptance. And I actually work with a lot of other queer folks who are really struggling with understanding their identity or finding acceptance. And the practices that I teach specifically related to that are really helpful for them to be more comfortable in their own bodies, to be an open expression of their own authentic self, an open expression of their soul is usually how I put it. So I've been really fortunate to have this love and support, and so I want to continue to spread this love and support. It's kind of like a wheel that keeps going, going, going. Um, so yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love doing the work that I do, because I get to see people come in sort of afraid and timid of themselves, and through the practices they start to embody themselves and they feel really powerful. And I see it happen, and I'm like, wow, you were like this an hour ago and now you're just so ready to be yourself and take on the world, but not fight against the world, but respond with your own truest expression of self.
It's the old adage of pay it forward.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you describe that as, you know, you want to take the gifts you were given and share them with others so that they understand that they are a gift too.
Mhm.
And the fact that you empower people to live their truth and to own their story, if you will, is so great. And it speaks so much to why I do these interviews, which I'm guessing is why you reached out to me to want to be on this platform and to share your story, because you saw what I was trying to accomplish. Um, is exactly that, obviously, in a completely different manner than you are. But I find it so important to make others feel empowered and know they're important. And everyone that has sat down with me to talk is important to me. And I am so grateful to know so many amazing humans. And the fact that they shared their story with me, little old me, is so honoring and humbling. And I hope that the people that watch the interviews, and especially this interview as well, is that they connect with the other human beings that they share the earth with and see the greatness in everyone that we are surrounded by.
Mm. Yes, that is so beautiful. And, I think that's one of the things about story. Story is something that allows us to express how we've uniquely walked in the world, but also see the ways that our unique paths have connected. There's that intersection. Because I have my own unique story that no one else has, but there's some parts of it that people will resonate with, and some parts people will not resonate with. And that's completely okay. And I feel like this platform specifically is a really beautiful space that you've curated where people are telling their stories and other people are connecting, and it's becoming this sort of web of um, people that are connected by their stories, and it feels very expansive, and that's why I wanted to come on. So thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for seeing that and embracing it and sharing in it. And it's exactly that. It's I firmly believe, like you said, that there is a piece of everyone that we can identify with because there's similarity somewhere. We're all created, equally,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
there's a piece of us that is shared, and I think that is so awesome.
Hmm.
Um, what is something that would surprise people to know about you?
Let's see, people would be surprised to know that I've lived in China for about 4.5 years. Um, every time I tell people that, they're shocked. They're like, "Whoa! Like, how did that happen?" And I'm from a more suburban area of California, and growing up, I just had to like leave. I was like, I feel like I'm destined for more. Like, I'm ready to see the world. And when I went to school in Berkeley, I got the opportunity to study abroad, and that whole thing was a whole spontaneous action of like, I feel this inkling to leave the country. I go to the study abroad office. They're like, oh, applications are due in 2 days. 2 days later, I put the application together and I'm submitted, and a month later I'm flying off to China for the very first time. um, So that whole process of me living in China, and as I was there, I was training with different kung fu masters. I was competing in tournaments. So like my whole time in China was very mystical, spontaneous, and adventurous, and was one of the greatest periods of my life. And I think people are always surprised when they hear about why I went to China and what I did. You know, the fact that I came from the small city and I left to go to China to train with kung fu masters. So
Talk about deepening your practice.
exactly.
What an experience.
Yeah, that has been it's been the most amazing thing because I've got to work with a number of people who don't usually share their practices with foreigners. But the fact of the matter is, because I speak Chinese and I came with such reverence for the practice, and you know, people saw like how my body likes to move through martial arts, and they're like, wow, okay, this person is seriously dedicated. And because of that, because people saw me training in like the park, and they would look at me, and they would come up to me, and they would try to correct my form, or they would try to give me advice, or they would say, oh, I know this person who knows this form and this thing. So it just sort of became like everyone was helping support my own martial arts journey, because they trusted me, and they saw that I authentically cared about the practice, and that I was diligent in learning.
I think that's so cool. And what an opportunity. Um, w- you said that the study abroad program was the first time you went to China, and then you went back later when you lived there for the extended length of time, right?
Exactly.
Talk to me about the difference in that first experience as a college student, younger person, right?
hmm
To then going back later. Was there a shift in your quote unquote vision, like the way you saw things from the first time to the next time?
It's a really good question. There was. So the first time I went, it was a study abroad program that was really just about traveling and studying. The studying part was like we had class, maybe 3 hours of class a week, and then our homework was to go to these like sites and like take pictures and like like write a reflection. So it felt more like a travel kind of experience, and I got to see all of Beijing in particular and some other parts of China. And then when I went back, I graduated, and then I went back, and I went there to work. You know, I went there to establish myself in the field of education. And so I worked at a university, and I taught for a couple years. And then I started counseling students and counseling adults for the next couple years. And so the second time I went, it was more of like, I'm ready to integrate my life into this place and really impact as many people as I can. Whereas the first time, I just wanted to be a sponge. I wanted to absorb the experience, absorb the people, absorb the food, absorb as much as I could. And I'm happy that the first time I went there, I just was a sponge. And the second time I went there, I was sort of giving back my knowledge, my wisdom to whoever had asked for it.
Very cool. I love hearing about the growth and and again, more of the giving back that you talked about earlier and paying everything forward. You seem to live a very gifted existence, and not only your own personal gifts, but the ones you choose to share with others. And I think that is a beautiful thing.
Hmm. Oh, thank you. It's beautiful to
Seriously,
hear
it's
that.
so, you've used the words authentic and empowering throughout this conversation. And you definitely come through to me as a very genuine human being who really wants to do good things and wants others to feel their good things and the possibilities for themselves. And I like that. I mean, even just in talking to you and you saying the things to me, I feel empowered to have a
Yay.
better day and to really continue and be motivated in this process. So, thank you for giving me that gift today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate hearing that reflection. It's interesting. I'm in the middle of doing some writings about this, but I find that the reason that I am this way is because I have gone through the process of looking into my own traumas and shadow, and this is the way that I have integrated it into my life. You know, like I am very fortunate to have had support and to have people who are there to help me. But at the same time, there's been a lot of instances where I didn't have that, and I craved more, and I craved support, and I needed it, and I wasn't able to get it at that time. And after going through the process of working through some of the more difficult aspects of my life, I found that I'm now able to give back. I'm able to help people be more authentic. I'm able to help people use these spiritual martial arts practices as a way to tap into themselves, because I at some point I didn't have that, and I needed it. So I find that the way that I am now is just sort of out of um, it's from the process of working through my own issues, but it's really out of me, it's out of the necessity of something that I needed for myself, and I became that, and now I'm willing to be that for other people.
Well, you see the need for others too.
Exactly, exactly.
At what age do you feel you had what you just were describing, the hardest time with struggling with whatever it was you were struggling with?
Yeah, that would be, it's interesting. So that would be middle school. Middle school was when I really, really struggled with my sexuality, with my body, with just my mindset was completely like in a really dark place. And that was around the time that I had found meditation. And meditation was a way for me to really sit and listen to all these thoughts that were coming in, see what thoughts are mine, what thoughts are other people's, and be able to find a sense of calmness within myself, which then helped me go through even more struggles in high school and even the beginning of college. But because I had meditation, I had a practice, a vehicle through which I can begin to filter a lot of what was happening. Because I find that, and I teach this a lot, I find that culture and society will say a lot of things and try to tell you who you are. But if you know how to not listen to that, if you know how to tune into yourself, which I was able to do through meditation, then I didn't have to listen to what society was telling me about myself. I could just listen to what I was telling me about myself. And that practice was really important. And that's what helped me go through high school and the beginning of college, which was still hard, but I had this practice to tune back into myself.
I think that's beautiful. I love meditating. I think you and I talked about that when we were setting this interview up. So
Yes.
I definitely can identify and align with that thought process. What is something that you would offer to those that are watching that may have experienced similar struggles and inner turmoil that you've described or that you felt and has empowered you to lend your services to others? What would you offer someone?
The teaching that love is available to every single person as long as they can tune within to find it. There's some aspect, and it might be deep down, it might be buried, there might be some dirts and some dirt and rock that's sort of covering it, but there is an aspect deep within yourself that you can love, and that loves you back. And so no matter what's going on, if you can stop and tune into that voice, find that voice and listen to it, it'll give you a little bit of hope and inspiration that will then move you forward through whatever situation you're facing. It's great to get support from the outer world and family and friends, but when you're able to find that voice within, it's beautiful. It's like a light that will guide the way. And so the one thing that I tell people, that I want to remind people, is that we have that capacity, that potential for loving ourselves deep within. And if we tune into it, it can become our guiding force, and it can become our light that helps us know how we want to move forward in the world.
Beautiful. Beautiful sentiment. I appreciate that. And I think we mentioned this earlier, but you have to love yourself for others to fully love you because you project what you want to receive.
Mm,
And I think that not only for others to appreciate your gifts, but for you to appreciate others. I think it takes owning your own story and loving yourself. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today. I have enjoyed this more than I can express. Um, I have one final question before we close out for the morning. As you are moving through the world, living your best life, and sharing your healings with others, if you had the opportunity to hold up a sign that says one thing about you, what would you want people to know about Sifu?
If you could hold up a sign, the sign would say, ask, don't assume. And I think it kind of goes back to your first question of like, when people see me, they have a perception of who I am, of how I'm going to behave, of how I'm going to act, and all of that. And as a recovering people pleaser, um, when people expect something out of me, I've always conformed to that expectation, and I've always become that particular thing. And I want to encourage people to not assume who I am, but instead to ask me about who I am, ask me about my story, and give me the chance to express myself and not, let's say, work through the impositions of culture or others. And I think that's important for everyone. Like, it's important that we're all asked who we are versus people telling us, like, oh, you're this, 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 and when people do that, they're putting us into a box, they're limiting our potential, they're they're opposite of widening, they're narrowing our scope of vision of ourselves. And so when we ask questions, it opens up the field of vision, it opens up the consciousness. I talk a lot about consciousness in my teachings. It opens up the consciousness so then we can then begin to see more of ourselves. And I find that to be important because healing requires us to be able to imagine more than our current circumstance. And the more that we practice asking these questions and seeing ourselves beyond what we see, what others are seeing, then we open up the potential, the field for healing and transformation.